Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Talking Tudors. My name is Dr. Owen Emmerson, and I am here with the incredible historian and podcast host, Natalie Grueninger, for a very special episode of Talking Tudors because today is the 7-year anniversary of Talking Tudors. Natalie, it's an absolute honor to be with you on this very special occasion. I'm going to be asking you some questions. But before that, would you like to introduce yourself to your audience?
Oh, this is so much fun being the guest rather than the host. And thank you so much, Owen, for joining me today. Yes, so hello, everyone. I'm so happy you could join us for this anniversary episode. As Owen said, we're marking a special occasion today. 7 years of talking tutors. I can actually not quite believe it's been that long, but it has been. And so, what we thought we'd do in this episode is have Owen be the host for a bit of fun. And he will be asking me some questions that my wonderful listeners, all of you, have sent in either via my Patreon community or my social media accounts. I did post on there that I was celebrating 7 years this week, and lots of lovely people sent in their questions. I should just say that there were similar questions that people sent in. So what I've done is I've grouped some of them. So forgive me for not referring to people by name. It's just that quite a lot of people had the same sorts of questions. So thank you for everyone who did submit. I am, of course, Natalie, host, so I will introduce myself. Many of you know that I've been the host of Talking Tudors since the start, so creator and host since 2018. I'm also an author, so I've written a number of books. And there are a couple of questions about my latest book there, so I'm sure we'll touch on that again. But I run also lots of online courses. So I'm a digital educator. In fact, I've got a fantastic one this weekend on Elizabeth Woodville happening. Owen and I have got one on Amberlin happening in October, and I also run a yearly course as well. So lots of things. I wear lots of different hats, to be honest, but very excited to be here with you, Owen.
It's an absolute honor. So many congratulations on 7 glorious years.
Thank you.
And this is my favorite podcast. So,
Aw.
it's a joy to
And I
be
didn't
asking
pay you to say
questions.
that, did I?
No, you didn't. Not at all. Absolutely not. So we're going to start with some questions, Natalie.
Yes, let's do
And
it.
the first is, how and when did your interest in the Tudors begin?
What a good question. Yes, so obviously the accent's given me away. I am a born and bred Sydney sider. I've always lived in Sydney, and so of course did my studies here. So here in Australia, we don't actually learn about the Tudors as part of our curriculum, certainly not in primary school. So I don't remember encountering them in primary school at all. Maybe I did, but I can't remember. And then in high school, you do have a choice to do ancient history, obviously. But I did modern history. Don't ask me why, but yes, I did modern history instead. So I don't really remember coming across them there. Of course, you do learn Shakespeare and things like that, but it wasn't the spark I needed to draw me into the world of the Tudors. So my interest actually begins in my late teens. I think I was about 19, and it, of course, was sparked by a book, as it so often is. And the book was called The Secret Diary of Anne Boleyn, a book by Robin Maxwell. Do you know it, Owen?
I do indeed.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's a novel. It is still a very popular novel, has had many editions, has sold many, many copies. And my sister was in fact reading it, and I remember that she lent me a copy, and I thought, okay, it's not really what I usually read, but I'll give it a go. And there was an immediate sort of connection with the characters in the story. So it is about Elizabeth who receives this diary, um, Anne Boleyn's diary. And so that kind of sparked my interest. And then not long after that, I was doing a solo trip, a European tour. And I had a few days in London beforehand. And again, I said to my sister, well, what should I do? I'm there on my own. And she said, oh, well, you have to visit the Tower of London and you have to visit Hampton Court Palace. And I thought, okay. So I knew very little. I just only sort of read this one book, went there and just fell completely head over heels in love. I do remember this one moment. and it was cold. It was November, I remember, and I was completely unprepared. My first time ever in England, actually. And, was certainly not wearing warm enough clothing, and I was freezing. My teeth were chattering, and I was actually standing on Tower Green. And in those many moons ago, this is so in those days, there was no fancy memorial. It was just a plaque, a very simple plaque right in front of the chapel, or very close to it anyway. And it named the people who were executed there. And I remember seeing Queen Anberlin, and I just thought, oh my goodness, I need to know how this woman ended up being executed, this queen. And to be honest, that was a question that I was trying to answer for many, many, many years, and finally addressed it in my book, The Final Year of Amberlin. But so it was the book, Robin Maxwell's book, that really sparked that interest, and that was a goodness, 25 years ago. Oh, and it's crazy how time flies.
It really, really is. And I love the fact that your gateway into Anne Boleyn was through popular culture.
Yeah,
Mine was too.
yeah.
It's so often the way, isn't it?
It's such a great way, I think, to pique people's curiosity. And then obviously fantastic when you dive into non-fiction after that. It's always great.
Totally. I love it. So the next question that I've got is inspiration for the podcast. Where did you get the idea from to do a podcast? Did it originate from the early books that you'd written about the Tudors and their places? What was the spark?
Yeah, that's such a good question because the podcast started in 2018, or I started it in 2018, and I started it pretty much immediately after getting the idea, which is, and for people that know me, this is very much me. This is my style. If I feel like I've got an idea that's an inspired idea, I want to act on it. I don't tend to sit around and wonder about it for very long. So I, in fact, started it because living here in Sydney, I often don't come across too many people in person who have an interest in the Tudors. In fact, it's very, very rare. So I suppose I was looking for a way to nurture my love of the Tudors, to be able to talk about the Tudors with people who were interested, who also had expertise in that area. And of course, a big thing for me, a big part of my work has always been sharing that passion and that love for Tudor history with people all over the world. I do, that's something I feel very passionate about, making learning accessible. I was a primary school teacher in my past life, so that's always been something at the core of what I do, making this learning really accessible. I wanted to connect with others who have the same passion, learn from other experts, of course, have really great conversations and share all of that. So I suppose the books that I had written contributed, but it was more this sort of yearning for connection with other people that were part of that world and had that same passion, and also wanting it to share the learning a little bit more widely in a way that was going to be accessible to people, hopefully, all over the world and from all walks of life and all different educational experiences. I just wanted to be something really accessible. And of course, we're all so busy now, Owen, and it's not always possible to sit, read a book, but to put on a podcast while you're doing the gardening or the cooking or whatever you're doing, it seems to be a really popular option. And I thought that would be a good way to move forward, I suppose.
Oh, I love it. I love the fact that it was about, connecting because I think
Yeah.
your podcast has done that for so many people as well. And I love the fact that it's a very accessible medium.
Yeah.
And, I always love enjoying your podcast when I'm doing things that I'm not particularly going to enjoy because it just like takes my mind completely off the task. So
Yeah.
mission accomplished,
Oh, well,
Natalie.
I'm glad to hear that.
Now, you mentioned that you were a primary school teacher prior to being a podcaster and indeed
Yeah.
during. But what gave you the courage to leave teaching and pursue your passion?
It took me a while to do that. So just to put things into sort of perspective, I started quite seriously researching and writing about the Tudor period in 2009 when I started on the Tudor Trail, which was my website. And that was sort of like the first quite serious step in the direction of making this a full-time job rather than just a sort of hobby. So that was 2009. So the podcast doesn't come out until 2018. So there's already a long period of time in which I'm building my online communities, building my readership, connecting with lots of wonderful, incredible historians and authors and other experts working in this period. So it's a big stretch of time. And through all that, I was teaching, as you've said. And I was teaching when I started the podcast. And this is the third year, I think, if my maths serves me correctly, that I've been doing
Yeah.
this full time. So I was teaching alongside doing all of this for a very long time. I suppose I was looking for a little break from the classroom, to be honest. And I wondered if I might be able to make this my full-time work. I had an idea for an online course, which again, and I think, Owen, you were one of the first people I told because I remember that I'd sort of brain dumped a page of notes. I don't know if you remember, and
I
it was
do.
365 days with Anberlin. And I brain dumped this page and I sent it to you and I said, I think I'm going to do this. This is going to be a yearly course. And, we just exchanged some ideas there. And I felt that that was a very inspired idea as well. And amazingly, when I put it out there, lots of people wanted to join. So that was sort of the first step that gave me the confidence to say, you know what, I can take a break. At that point, I just said it was a break from teaching, from the classroom to focus on running the podcast and doing the online course and sort of see how it goes was the way I kind of told myself to not make it too scary. Um, and because it wasn't a huge risk, I knew I had income. I wasn't putting my family at risk or anything like that. I thought I'll try it. I'll test it out and see what happens. It went really well and it's continued to go really well. So I'm so grateful for that. But I suppose I had the courage because I had a plan in place, is maybe the sort of short answer, the summary. And also because I felt that it was an idea that was quite inspired and something that I'd worked a long time towards and wanted to give myself that space to at least try it and see what would happen.
Oh, I'm so proud of you. You've done incredibly, incredibly well. And yeah, you're an inspiration.
Oh, thank you.
So the next question we've got is about booking the guests. How do you go about booking them? Um, it might have been difficult at first, perhaps, but how has that sort of evolved?
Yeah, interesting question. And people are very interested in this sort of aspect of the podcast. When I think back to the sort of first 3 months or so of the podcast, I was so lucky, Owen, because I had already made some incredible connections. I mentioned that I'd been running my website already since 2009. And as part of that, what I'd been doing is interviewing people. It was just a written interview, but it was an interview with authors, Tudor historians, other experts. So I did already have quite a few connections there. So I basically reached out to people that I was already kind of connected with. And the first episode was with Sarah Morris, who some of you will know as the Tudor travel guide. So Sarah and I had written books together. So she was sort of like a natural first person. We always have a lot of fun when we do interviews. So I thought, oh, she'd be fantastic as the first guest. I was very lucky to very early on get the support of incredible people like Tracy Borman, who came, she was one of the, within the first sort of group of 20 guests, probably. Professor Susanna Lipscomb, who was incredibly supportive in those early days as well. It was a wonderful group of historians to start with, and I was very lucky to have already made lots of those sort of links. Now it's a bit different because now I get a lot of people reaching out to me, which is really lovely, and proposing, their ideas or their research. So it's changed a little bit, although I still, of course, love finding new people to talk to, people that are doing some amazing things that maybe their work isn't sort of out in the wider sphere. So it's always wonderful to chat with people. Yeah, so I've been very lucky to have been able to interview lots of wonderful people and to have had that incredible sort of support at the beginning, where I was just starting out. That really, really helped, I have to say.
That's amazing. And I have to say, yours was the first podcast that I ever went on.
Yay.
And I think I'm right in saying that for many of us, you were our first podcast
Hmm.
host. and you're always so generous. I remember being so nervous. I was
Oh.
at Hever in a quiet little room and absolutely terrified. So thank you for always being
Oh.
so generous with your wonderful questions as well. And, for being the baptism of fire for so many of us when we're starting out in,
Oh, I love
this
that.
arena.
I love
Yeah.
that so much. And then I love seeing that people go out and doing lots of other exciting things. And I think, oh, yes, that was so nice to talk to, to you and to Kate McCaffrey. I know she came onto my podcast and hadn't done other podcasts. So it's all lovely to see how amazing the work that you're all doing now as well.
Bless you. The next question is about your experience in interviewing. You mentioned that you did sort of written interviews, um, but did you have any experience conducting interviews before you started your podcast? And the questioner says you are great at it, and
Oh.
I agree. I agree.
Oh, that's so sweet. Apart from the written interviews, I'm trying to think, did I have any? I actually don't think I did. No. Which, yeah, it's a bit, I just jumped into the deep end, didn't I? This is the funny thing. I didn't actually have any podcasting experience. Sometimes people ask that as well. I actually don't know, Owen, if I'd even listened to a podcast before I started my podcast. So that tells you the sort of person I am when I get an idea. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. Sure, easy. So no real like face-to-face interviewing, but apart from the sort of written interviews. But I don't know, I've always worked in very public-facing roles, always, and always in sort of customer service type roles. I sort of feel like it helped because I always was in conversation with people. That was always part of my job from as long as I can remember, to be honest with you. And I do feel that helped, and I am a bit of a people person, people do say that. So I think all of that is helpful because what I certainly want from my podcast is for it to be like a conversation. So I feel that if you've got those kind of interpersonal skills, then it is going to help. And then the interviewing, you do improve, obviously, as you go along and you start understanding what types of questions are great and what types of questions help people. Because what you want is the guest to shine, the guest to come out of their shell and to yeah, share their work. So thank you. That's very kind of the whoever asked the question to say that they enjoy my interviewing style. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think those skills come across abundantly.
Oh, thank you.
Um, the next question is about how you prep, essentially. How do you prepare? And then how do you get yourself sort of in the mood for a guest? And how long roughly do your interviews last prior to the edit?
Yeah, all good questions. So how do I prepare? Well, I will, of course, do research. So, and usually I do quite a bit of this even before I've asked somebody to be on the show so that I have an understanding of what they're doing. I normally go in with an idea already about what I'd like to talk to that person about. Sometimes that evolves because they might say, "Oh, can we also chat about this or can we do this instead?" So that does happen. But usually I've done some extensive research on the guest, on their work. I've got questions in mind that I want to talk to them about. So that's sort of the preparation part. In terms of how long the interviews last, it varies. Of course, if it's somebody that I know, the usual thing is to record and then have a chat or have a chat and then record. So of course, all that is off air apart from the actual interview. So, but if it's, somebody I've just met, obviously, then I don't tend to cut very much out, to be honest with you. I do a little bit of a light edit, of course, and, sometimes there's interruptions and things that you need to cut out. But generally, the bulk of the conversation is how it unfolded, how it happened. So, and then with the video, because I have been publishing video now on as well recently, that usually just needs a very sort of light edit, but I think it's nice to see that natural progression in the conversation. I think people find that that's a nice way to connect with the guest and with myself as well. And now, of course, I should just mention the wonderful Lee Wakefield, who is helping me with some research as well. So up until she sort of joined me, which was very, very recent, last couple of months, this was a complete one-woman show. I was doing absolutely everything. I do now have Lee, who's helping me with finding some really wonderful people to invite to the show and also with helping a little bit with that research side and that preparation. But before Lee joined, this was, or just everything that I was doing behind the scenes. But it is wonderful to have her. I won't lie. I'm absolutely loving that.
Amazing. I'm so pleased that she's working with you, and I honestly don't know how you did it all
I don't know.
yourself.
I don't
Just
know either.
amazing. Absolutely amazing. Now, when you started your podcast, did you have any hopes, aspirations, dreams that it would one day become your full-time job? And when did you decide to make this your full-time career?
Yeah, so I think when I started it, I was just sort of doing it because I felt compelled to do it, if that sort of makes sense. I
Yeah.
I'm not, I know that I probably should do a bit more planning sometimes for my ideas, but I tend to go with that sort of gut feeling. I've done that for the final year of Amberlin. I've done it for Talking Tutors, the 365 days courses. When I feel that it's a really sort of inspired idea, I try and get it up and running as quickly as possible because, oh, and you know what happens once you
Yeah.
let the mind get in the way, the doubts come out. Why should I do a podcast? I don't have no podcasting experience, and all of that. So I was trying to avoid actually listening to my own doubting voice, which is why I kind of act on ideas quite quickly. So I didn't think too far ahead into the future. Of course, I was hoping that it would be popular and that people would enjoy it and that it would, help educate people in terms of the Tudor period and all of that. I suppose in the background, yes, I thought it would be wonderful if this could be a full-time gig at some point, but that wasn't my focus. I just want to kind of emphasize that the focus was simply sharing the period of history that I love, making those connections, talking to people. That's always what I focus on rather than a sort of faraway end goal. So I find that that kind of robs you of the beauty of the journey if you're constantly looking out into some far off point. So of course that was there in the background, I think, but certainly my focus was just on the work that I was doing, making that as good as I could make it, and growing the audience as well.
I love it. Um, do you have any favorite episodes, Natalie?
Oh my goodness, this one is so tricky. People always ask this, and I honestly I cannot pick a favorite. It's impossible. I've done over 300 episodes. But I will say that among my favorites, it's a bit cheating, sorry, I know. Among my favorites are episodes where I've spoken to a guest and that has led to a really beautiful friendship. And I've got a
Yeah,
perfect example sitting here right in front of me because Owen, our episode came out, I think it was 2020 actually. So it was a
I
couple of years
think so.
after I'd
Yeah.
started. And it was just amazing how it happened because of course I just reached out to Hever and said I would love to interview somebody there about Hever Castle. And they said, "Oh, we've got just the right person." And of course it ended up being you. And that was obviously 5 years ago. But now obviously we have a wonderful friendship. We go on lots of wonderful holidays together. So I think those episodes where the guest has turned into a friend, and I can think of other examples. Kate McCaffrey's another example, but there's quite a few are always so special, I have to say. They're always wonderful. And as you've already mentioned, when people say to me, "Oh, you were my first podcast," and then they go off and do incredible things, I just think, oh, that is so special as well. So they're probably among my favorite ones, but I honestly I could not pick a favorite. There's just been too many incredible conversations, wonderful people, so many insights shared over the 300 just over 300 episodes. I could pick something wonderful about each of them, really, if I had to. So I'm just going to cheat and just going to say yes, the ones where friendships have sort of blossomed from them and where people have felt confident to go off and do other things because they've had a positive experience on my podcast. That's amazing.
Oh, I love it. That's so lovely. It really is. So, another question.
Yes.
If the Tudors were alive, which of them would you like to interview for a podcast? And do you have any questions you'd be dying to ask them?
Oh my goodness, there's so many I'd love to interview. Oh, who would I love to interview? Well, goodness, of course, I'd love to interview Anne Boleyn. That goes without kind of saying. What would I even ask her? Oh, I don't even know. What would I ask her? Well, I suppose I'd. I'd have to sort out the birth debate pretty quick. Hello, Anne. Can
Yeah,
you
that would
just
be
can you
helpful.
just tell me when you were born, please? Exactly, day, month, year, hour, everything. After that, I think I'd ask her about her experience in at the court of Margaret of Austria. I'd certainly ask her about Francis the First's court. I need all the
Yeah.
goss on that. And then, of course, the million-dollar question, when did she meet Henry? Was it love at first sight or was it something very different? So I think Anne's definitely got to be one of them. Who else
Oh
would I
yeah.
like to inter— Oh, well, I think I wouldn't mind having a chat with Thomas Cromwell, to be honest with you, Owen.
Yeah. He'd be a good one.
I think I'd love to ask him whether he regretted his role in Anne's fall. I'm desperate to know that actually,
Yeah.
whether he felt that it later came back to bite him in the butt big time, whether he felt that had he remained more loyal to Anne, or at least just, followed the law properly and not invented charges, whether things maybe would have turned out differently for him. I'd love to sort of know that. I suppose I'd like to interview Henry too, although I don't know if I'd get through it. I'd probably just be too cranky with him to interview him. But there are so many. Elizabeth, she would be incredible, Elizabeth the First. Although I think I'd just be so intimidated. I don't think I'd know what to say to her. So lots, yes, lots of people, lots of questions.
L- Lots and lots of them. Now, we heard about how you became interested in Amberlin,
Mm.
but why? Why did she interest you?
It's so funny because after all this time, you'd think I'd have such a well-rehearsed answer to that question. But you know what I like to do with that question? I just like to see what comes up when people ask it because it's always
Yeah.
tends to be something a bit different. Why Anne Boleyn? I actually don't think I went out looking for that interest. I certainly feel like Anne found me in a way, which I know sounds a bit weird, but I do feel that. And it's a combination of things, isn't it? Like the story is just unbelievable. It's one of the most compelling stories, that I have ever heard suddenly from history. But then there's something about Anne, isn't there? There is something about her that is difficult to kind of pinpoint. And by no means is it because I think she was perfect. Let me just get that out of the way. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I feel that because she was very complex, because she was flawed, because she had a very vulnerable side to her, I feel that I can connect with her. When I look at some, perhaps some other women from history, I find them difficult to kind of access. But with Anne, I think because there are very human elements about her, yes, she had some pretty bad days, made some bad decisions that I feel, oh yeah, I can connect with that. Maybe not so much with being an incredible horsewoman, which she was. She was incredibly intelligent. She was so charismatic. She was so highly educated. She valued similar things to what I value in terms of education and helping, people in society. All of that I feel that I can connect with. But I think, to be honest, it's the mixture of the compelling story, the mystery. I've always loved
Yeah.
mysteries since very little. All the unknown, all the stuff that we debate about her, and the fact that she was so human, making those mistakes, but ultimately one of the most courageous people whose story I've come across, to be honest. You know, Pure courage, really, that woman. And so there's, yeah, lots of different things, and it's been just wonderful developing that love, I suppose, of her life and her story, and watching it evolve because it's certainly evolved since my interest in her was sparked by that book.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Now, the cover of your book
Ah,
is the
yes.
next question, and I totally agree with the questioner who says that it is absolutely beautiful. Can you just talk a little bit about how you and your team came up with the design?
Well, yeah, I can't really take credit for any of it. I'll show you if you're watching this interview on YouTube. There it is. So it is a gorgeous cover, I have to say. I was totally in love with it as soon as I saw it. The portrait that we have here of Anne is the one from the National Gallery of Ireland. So if my memory serves me correctly, I think I came across that portrait, loved it, and sent it over to the publisher and asked if that could be incorporated. But all the other elements are absolutely their design. I didn't have anything to do with that. And it's also elements here, I don't know if you can see, but are on the background of Lucy Churchill's incredible medal, which I was just saying if I had here, but it's not quite here. Um, so they incorporated some elements of the Most Happy medal into the design, and then there's the beautiful portrait from the National Gallery of Ireland. Of course, oh, we don't know how much this actually resembled the real Anne. It's very possible that we're looking at somebody probably looks more like Elizabeth than like Anne, but that's a whole different ball game, that one. So I just love it because I think it captures something of her like vivacity, of her intellect, that sharp intellect, of that charisma, that sort of mysterious element that made people want to watch and see what she's doing, and to follow on research about her. I think she's quite captivating, and I think that they did a really fantastic job with the cover.
I love it. It's so beautiful. And I'm so pleased it's available in paperback now as well, which
Yeah,
is very, very
that's the
exciting.
paperback one. That's very exciting. Yes.
Gorgeousness. Now, who is your favorite Tudor queen? And if you have one, I think I might know the answer to that one.
Don't know if I have one.
And if you could bring one Tudor figure and bring him or her back to today's modern world, who would it be?
Well, I think everyone's probably guessed in terms of who I feel most drawn to. I'm not going to say my favorite because I'm trying not to play favorites. I'm trying to be politically correct here and not play favorites. But I feel most drawn to Anne's story in terms of the Tudor queens. Who would I bring back? Well, I'd love to bring Anne, but that's sort of obvious. So I'm going to think about somebody else. You know who'd be quite interesting, I think? I'm just going to say Elizabeth. I'd love to see Elizabeth in the modern world, as in Elizabeth the First.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should say there's been a million Elizabeths. I would really love to see what she does in modern world. I think she would be. What do you think? Do you think she'd be like a sort of CEO of a company or something like that?
Something like that. Yeah, absolutely. I think she'd be faintly terrifying but magnificent.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be funny to see any of them actually in our modern world. I wonder what they
Yeah,
would think of the way we live. That would be interesting.
I think they would be quite shocked.
I think so.
Now, do you see Queen Jane Grey or Dudley as the imposter,
Mm.
or is it Queen Mary the First, or is it a bit messier than that?
Okay, wow, that's a really tricky question. I do think it's a complex issue, very complex issue. Um, but I have to say, I do think Mary was the rightful heir and absolutely should have been queen. I realize that Edward left his device for the succession, but I actually think that was sort of jumping the gun a bit, and it should have all been done through Parliament if that's what he wanted, and it wasn't. So, I definitely think in terms of legal status, then Mary's your queen, and I feel very much I don't want to say sorry for her, but I do for Lady Jane Grey because she was just left in the most difficult and awful position. So I have to say that yeah, I'm a Mary supporter in this case, Owen.
Haha, interesting. Very interesting. I love it. Um, do you have any history on Elizabeth Boleyn? And would you ever record a podcast episode about her?
Oh, yes, I love Elizabeth Boleyn. Sadly, we don't know too much about Elizabeth, although in saying that, there is a new biography coming out, which is very exciting,
Yeah.
by Sophie Backus-Waterman. And I am hopefully going to get a peek at it pretty soon. And also, we'll have Sophie on the podcast. So, to answer that question, yes, I will absolutely be doing a podcast episode about Elizabeth Boleyn. And it won't come out until a little bit later in the year to coincide with the release of the biography, but look out for that. I think Elizabeth's absolutely fascinating. What we do know, Owen, and what I feel that I've come to understand in the time I've been studying Anne is that the Boleyns were a very close-knit family. They were very close, which makes the sort of end to this story all the more tragic because,
Yeah.
as I've said before, they operated as a team. Anne and her mother, by all accounts, were very close. In fact, Anne only mentions a handful of people while she's in the tower. One of them is her mother, who she's very concerned about. Her mother's been unwell, and Anne is very worried that her imprisonment, of course, is going to have a negative impact on her. We know that her mum operates as a sort of chaperone in the early days with Henry. So I do think that she was with Anne a lot of the time. Sometimes we don't have direct evidence for it, but I think we can certainly say that this is a close-knit family. I think Elizabeth's absolutely fascinating in her own right. So I'm very much looking forward to reading this new biography, and seeing what Sophie has uncovered. I know she's hinted at some new and interesting bits of information. So I honestly can't wait to read that. It'll just make this picture of the Boleyns all the more richer, I think, which is absolutely wonderful.
Terribly exciting because, as you say, she's sort of been in the shadows for quite a long
Yes,
time, hasn't
yeah.
she? Is there anyone from the Tudor period who you have changed your opinion on through your research or speaking to guests on the show?
Mm. Wow, what a great question. Who have I changed my opinion on? I'm going to cheat a little bit here. Oh, actually, no, I'm not going to cheat. I was going to start by cheating, but I'm not. I'm going to stick with the Tudor period. And I'm going to say Margaret Beaufort, Owen. I feel like I feel like I had a really skewed interpretation of Margaret Beaufort, probably thanks to all the sort of portrayals in popular culture where she's not particularly nuanced or interesting. And so I'm so grateful for people like Nicola Tallis and other historians who've worked on Margaret and have shown that she was so much more than just this kind of religious crazy zealot. So I think probably Margaret's the one that's had a big shift, one that's sort of happening right now, kind of. And I don't want anyone to send me mean messages after I say this, Owen, but I'm a little bit shifting, I think, when it comes to Richard III. I said it. Oh my goodness. So I don't know. I am a bit of a fence sitter when it comes to him, but the more I study the 15th century, the more I look into the Woodville family, which is what I've been doing of late. I'm starting to wonder if there wasn't perhaps more motive than I originally thought there was for some of his actions towards the end of his life, basically, is what I'm saying. So I haven't, there's nothing firm in my mind yet, but I certainly was of the opinion that he couldn't have done the awful things that he was accused of. And now I'm more like, could he have done the awful things that he was accused of for certain reasons? So he's one that's sort of a continuously evolving kind of thing. But certainly Margaret, I feel like I've made a bit of a shift with her after speaking to lots of people and just doing my own research as well.
Oh, I love it. That's so exciting. And, two individuals who have sort of been a pendulum in the big
Mm.
question about the princes. So very interesting there that you've revised your opinion as evidence has been presented. Very interesting indeed. Okay, so how many Tudor books are in your library? And after Amberlin, who's your favourite of Henry's wives and why?
Oh, how many books? You know what? I actually haven't counted them in a while. I think there's got to be, I I don't know. I'm thinking a few hundred, perhaps, Owen, at the moment. They're not all specifically like
Yeah.
nonfiction Tudor. There's a bit of a mixture. There's some here, there's some just next to me, there's some downstairs. So they're kind of everywhere, to be honest. But that's actually reminded me that I do need to make a bit of an inventory of the books so that I actually know what I have in my collection. Because sometimes
Yeah.
I have purchased the same book twice, which is not good. Um, in terms of the second part of that question, after Anne, who do I feel most drawn to? I think I am interested in all of the queens, but I think maybe Catherine Parr, Owen. I think possibly
Yeah.
Catherine Parr, and I think again, I think because to be honest, I think there's similarities between Catherine and Anne Boleyn. I think they were both incredibly intelligent, so I'm drawn to Catherine's intelligence, again, to her love of learning. I am an absolute lifelong learner. Learning is a huge part of my life, self-directed learning and other learning. So I think I'm really attracted to the fact that Catherine was a learner as well, that of course she was a writer as well, wrote books, spiritual texts, but and was such a lovely figure, role model, mother figure for the Tudor princes and princesses. So there's so much to admire about her. And she's a very complex woman too. So I don't know. I think it has to be Catherine. I feel like that was the sort of natural response when you asked that question. So I'm going to go with Catherine Parr.
I share your love too. I think she's a fascinating woman. Absolutely so. Now, if you could go back in time to one single day and witness it as a fly on the wall, what day would it be?
Oh, only one day. That's really tricky
Yeah.
because there's lots. And I love, see that this is why this is difficult because of course there are some big events that I'd love to be a witness to or at, but I also would love to see just a sort of quiet, regular day in the life of some of these people too. But
Yeah.
because I'm trying to be good and not to say two things, I'm going to say I'm actually going to say the field of cloth of gold, Owen. And I'm going to say that because I sort of think that almost everyone who was anyone would have been there. So it would have been an
Yeah.
opportunity to see, of course, not just the Boleyn family that I'd love to see, but also then the French court as well, and the French king and Henry, and then everyone, all the important courtiers who were there. So I think that's going to be my pick. And of course, seeing all that ceremony, the jousting and all the other events that were held, the gift exchange. I think there's a lot. It's a very rich event, and you see all the sort of diplomacy happening and all the negotiating that's going on. But then you see everyone dressed to the nines, and then there's all that side of it as well. So then there's the music and all the pageants and all of that. So I think I'm going to go with a field of cloth of gold.
That's a great choice. Yeah.
I was almost going to say Anne's coronation. I was that close.
I think I would join you. I think there'd be more variety,
I think there'd be more variety. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Nat, did you start off liking someone in history and then changed your view over the years?
I can't actually think, Owen, if there was somebody that I liked, then didn't like that much. You know what I've come to realize, to be honest, is that everything was so much more complex than what it's often presented as. I do
Yeah.
feel that that is a big lesson that I've learned over the years, and that is that the people, even the ones that we might consider to be pretty despicable, often had other sides to them. When we look, and I'm just going to give an example and just use Thomas Cromwell as an example, of course. If you are a fan of Anne Boleyn and the Boleyns, then of course his role in Therefore is horrific. You know, it's awful. But then when you sort of look at Thomas's life from different perspectives, and of course Hilary Mantel was amazing at doing this and at showing the different sides to him, and you see that he was a beloved family man, that he did so much for his extended family, you know, how they loved him and relied on him, then you start seeing a different side. It's not just this awful, evil Thomas Cromwell. There's these other elements to him. And so I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned, that even where a person appears to be kind of all black or all white, there's often shades that we see once we start digging, once we start questioning the traditional narratives that are so important. And it's such a big part of what I've been doing lately, you know, and actually for the last few years, actually, but questioning everything, you know, asking questions of the stories that we tell, wondering about things. Is this grounded in fact, or is this stories that were told with certain agendas that we are echoing today? So I think I've come to understand that people are a lot more complex than what perhaps appears on the surface, just as we are today, obviously, and that it's important to look at things from different angles and different perspectives and to interrogate the sources that we have. So I know that doesn't exactly answer that question, but I suppose rather than liking someone and then not liking them, what I mean is that for a lot of the people of this period, I've just come to understand how much more complicated they are, how much more complex the story is, and how we do, yes, need to question a lot of what we say about these people.
Messy, isn't it? I love it.
Messy,
Absolutely love it.
so messy.
So messy. Now, are you currently writing your next book, or do you have an intention to do so? If so, can you reveal the focus?
Um, I am not currently writing. I have got lots of ideas, as I would probably know, because I always share them with him. But there is one idea that is standing out above all others. And I have started doing some research. I'm always doing research in different bits and pieces, but I am particularly looking at this aspect. I don't think I can say too much just yet, except to say that it is continuing the work that I've done on one fabulous woman and perhaps combining it with another fabulous woman. So that obviously doesn't tell you too much, but basically it's still women's history that I'm really interested in. It's still largely around the 16th century, although it may include another century as well. And while there's been no actual sort of writing done yet, there's certainly quite a bit of exploration of the idea and research to see if this is something viable and something that I think that I want to spend, 3 to 5 years working on.
I love it. Love it, and very excited as well. I won't spill any
No,
tea.
no tea
Um,
spilling.
Now, Nat, what are your top tips for pursuing a love of Tudor history from the other side of the world, from where the Tudor story played out?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Well, I think we're so lucky now, aren't we, with the internet and other things that we can do these things. So top tips would be to start get yourself involved in a little network of people, firstly. If you can, reach out to some other people that are loving what you're loving, join some of the amazing communities that there are about the Tudors, hint, hint, there's the Talking Tudors Patreon community that you can join that has lots
Absolutely.
of lots of Tudor history lovers from around the world. So reach out, make some connections. If you're online, look at some of the amazing social media accounts that there are. There's so much out there. Digital courses, Owen, another big part of
Yeah,
feeling connected and up to date, I think. And you know, there's so many that you could possibly do, of course. So short courses, long courses. Keep an eye on whatever it is that you're interested in. Of course, reading, you can always, from wherever you are, read books. There's your local library, so don't feel that you have to go out and purchase. That can be very expensive. I know it's an expensive habit buying books. So head to your local library. Even if they don't have a book that you're after, speak with the librarian because often what they will do is get a copy for you. So absolutely utilize your local library. They may have some digital resources you can access via the library as well. So always ask, I think. Librarians are a wealth of information, as are archivists. So if you go to like your local museum or something like your local university library, there's always a lot to explore if you just sort of do a little bit of digging. But then I would say, listen to those podcasts, engage with the community online if you can, make some connections with people that love what you love so that you can nurture that love together. For example, the Talking Tutors community, Patreon community, has a book club as well. So we all read. We're currently reading Gareth Russell's amazing book on Queen James, and everyone's loving it. So once we're all finished reading, we get together, we have a Zoom like we're doing here, Owen, and we discuss it. And it's a really lovely way of just sharing our thoughts and insights. So yeah, look for little communities to join. If you're lucky enough to have someone in person that you can meet up for a cup of tea and talk tutors with, that's always a great idea as well.
love it. That's really good advice, and I endorse it wholeheartedly. Now, after these 7 years and having a bit of time to reflect on everything you've accomplished, Nat, is there anything you look back on and think you'd have done it a bit differently, knowing what you know now?
That's a really good question. I think I need to reflect more. I don't think I've done enough reflecting. Um, And this is just like a technical, annoying thing that does annoy me. When I sort of started the podcast, as I said, I didn't know very much about anything. So I didn't think too deeply about who I was going to host the podcast with. Not that there's been nothing wrong with the hosting company I use, but what happened is that I didn't realize that the episodes weren't being pushed out automatically to things like iTunes and Spotify and all of that. So it actually took me a couple of years, I think, if not more, to work out, oh, I'm missing out on a big chunk of listenership here because I haven't done these very minor little things that I had to do. So when I realized it, of course, I rectified that immediately. Now you can listen on Spotify, or wherever you listen to, your podcast. But it does mean that it sort of starts on there at, I think it's at about episode 100, let's say. And to listen to the previous ones, you do have to go to the Podbean app. So I don't know if that can be fixed now. I'm not sure. Probably there probably is a workaround. I just haven't even looked into it. But I suppose that is one thing that if I could go back and start again, I'd ensure that from the very beginning that was all streamlined. Maybe also in terms of, and this is again a little bit sort of left field, but in terms of branding, Owen, I've done so many different things over the years that I've got lots of sort of different branding, and I'm trying to streamline that and come back to just myself and the podcast are the two sort of main, I suppose, elements of the work that I'm doing that I'm hoping to move forward with. But yeah, it is interesting how once you start reflecting, you think, oh, okay, yeah, maybe if I'd slowed down a little and thought about these things more. But I'm very happy with how everything sort of unfolded. I do think that it has all happened exactly as it should. So I can't complain.
Now, Natalie, can you talk a little bit about the future direction of your podcast and work?
Hmm. That's a good one. See, this person, whoever asked this question, knows that I need to do some more reflecting. Absolutely. So, yes, look, I think future direction, certainly my goal, my aim, what I'd love is for the listenership to continue to grow as it has been, to grow the communities that I run in order for us to have access to all this wonderful information. The goal is pretty much the same as it's always been to share really great Tudor history with people all over the world. I'm not into any sort of academic gatekeeping, none of that. So, what I want is just to present some great experts sharing their incredible work with people everywhere, regardless, as I've said, of what you're doing for employment, what you've done for education. That makes no difference. If you love the Tudors, then you have a right to access this really great information and study it. Connecting with people outside of England has always been a big part of the work I do. I understand the pain people feel at not being able to, access Tudor sites all the time and all this sort of stuff. So continuing to build those relationships in that community, growing the audience. You know what I would love to do, and I have been thinking about Owen as well, is perhaps incorporating some in-person stuff. So,
Oh,
yeah, so I've got, supporters all over the world, but I have a big, big base in the USA, big base in the UK, and a growing sort of population and audience here in Australia as well. So I'd love to do some sort of Talking Tudors weekends or things like that. So that's certainly in the pipeline, but of course that requires a lot of kind of planning and working. But it's an idea that I would love to have at least little meetups where in different locations we could come together. There might be some wonderful experts like yourself, Owen, and we could meet some of the Talking Tudors gang and just have a wonderful day exploring this period of history that we all love so much. So that's something I'd love to do. But of course, connecting with other people, myself being a guest on other people's shows and things like that, spreading the love, spreading the word, the Tudor word. I would absolutely love to do as well. So that's sort of the direction that I am going in, I think, at this stage.
that's incredibly exciting. And, it's been an incredible 7 years. I'm so proud of
Yes.
everything that you've accomplished.
Thank
And I'm very, 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 very excited for the future. I think it's looking very bright indeed. I've got one last question for you, Natalie. How can listeners support the work that you do?
This is such an important and wonderful question. So thank you. There's lots of ways, and there are ways that I hope that everyone could do, which is just basically sharing the podcast online, sending it to one friend that you think might enjoy it. Maybe now to celebrate with me, everyone can text one friend or message one friend or post it on their story on Instagram or, do one little Facebook post about it or TikTok or whatnot. All of that is incredibly helpful. My podcast basically operates through word of mouth. That's basically how people find it. And another really important aspect are the reviews, the ratings and the reviews. So wherever you listen, there's lots of different places where people listen, but usually you can leave a little review and you can leave a star rating. This is so helpful when it comes to other people finding it because like you've probably done it yourself, Owen, if you're thinking about listening to something, you might have it like bring it up on your phone or whatnot. And if it's got lots of great reviews, then you're thinking, okay, well, it's worth my time. I'll give it a go. I'll have a listen. So it's really, really helpful, and it just gets pushed out more, basically, if it's rated highly. So that's something I think anyone can do. If you want to support further, another wonderful way is to check out the Talking Tutors Patreon community. So basically, my podcast has lasted this long because of the incredible generous people who support the podcast financially through Patreon, through a small monthly pledge. And in return for that pledge, they get lots of fun rewards, including listening to us banging on about Tudor films and all sorts of things. You know, there are specials. Lee Wakefield's doing a special at the moment on Tudor Queens on film. I have live chats with experts. I check in with people generally weekly. Sometimes if it gets busy, it's fortnightly. But, you know, there's a lot going on. There's the book club, there's monthly giveaways. It's a beautiful community. The people are amazing. There's people from all over the world. That is extremely helpful because that just means I can keep bringing you lots of great podcasts. So if you want to help, you want to make sure it lasts for another 7 years, do check it out. Another way, of course, is just supporting the other work that I do. So the digital courses, and lots of you already have. So thank you so much for anyone who's ever enrolled in one of my short courses or in the yearly course that I run. So next year it will be 365 days with Katherine of Aragon. I'm so excited for it. This program's incredible. Owen is part of the program. He's part of this year's program as well. So if you want to check that out, have a look at onthetutortrail.com. You'll find all the information there. But just in general, helping me spread the word is just amazing, and I'm so grateful, honestly, for any support in that area.
Oh, that's amazing. And I love being a contributor to many of your amazing avenues of knowledge and learning. On behalf of your listeners, I would love to thank you for 7 years of absolute joy. You've given us so much. So thank you, Natalie.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for tuning in to this special episode, whether you're watching on YouTube or whether you're listening. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. It means so much to me. We just clicked over 4.4 million downloads, actually, Owen. So I'm excited. It's not the biggest boy in town, but it's mine. So I love it. So thank you so much, everyone. And do leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube, but say hello. I'd love to hear from you, or pop over onto socials and say hi. I always love to hear from listeners and see where people are tuning into Talking Tutors from. So let me know.
Yeah.
And Owen, you've been an amazing guest host. Thank you so much.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you, Natalie.
Bye bye, everyone. See you all soon.